What's up, guys? Here with the crew. I don't know if you can see Mr. Karan in the back there.
What's up?
Being a little child in the kiddie seat.
Hey,
Mr. Aaron behind the wheel.
You know how I roll.
We're just over here in Virginia Beach, getting some content in, getting some new ads, and just pushing hard like always. And I wanted to just vlog here and kind of just rap to you guys about, we'll all chime in here on what we all think is the #1 skill to have in 2020, and honestly I think for the next 5-10 years minimum.
Not even 5 to 10 years, just ultimate,
just in general
ever.
Yeah, like
ever.
In general, as an entrepreneur, the #1 skill to have. A lot of people think that you need to have like a real technical skill and you need to be great at like this, you know, something really technical, like for example like advertising is a great skill to have, but in all of our opinions, the #1 skill to have as an entrepreneur is by far sales. And more specifically, not just sales as in like, can you go out and like convince somebody to do something they may or may not want to do? Because that's kind of like old-fashioned sales. In 2020, in like the new age of sales, it's all about how to effectively communicate. So dude, what do you think about that?
Dude, I think you're spot on. I mean, it doesn't even matter if you're just running an agency, if you're running a fucking Starbucks, whatever you're doing, like you have to know how to sell.
Yeah.
If all you're doing as a media buyer, well, what are you selling media to? Like, where's your media going? You're selling it to traffic. So you still have to know how to sell, and that's even done through advertising.
Even if it's through your written word.
Yeah, exactly. So whether it's vocal, written, whatever it is, like you're always selling something. And if you feel like you need to avoid sales, then you're just avoiding the inevitable, and more likely than not, you're never actually gonna run a profitable business if you never understand it.
Yeah, 100%, man. I think sales is literally like the lifeblood of any business. And I think the beautiful thing about getting better at sales, I mean, at least this has been my experience, it's made me such a better communicator, and like sort of a byproduct of that is just in general, my relationships with people, like in my life, my business relationships, friendships, etc. They've just skyrocketed because I've gotten better at communicating. I know how to connect more deeply with people because I understand like how to ask proper questions, which is, dude, I think that in and of itself, we emphasize all the time, is like, that's a skill. That's literally an art and science, you know?
How did you first start learning about sales though? Where'd you first start teaching yourself? What'd you do to learn?
So for me, I mean, I just started working in sales, you know, and I got a sales job back in 2017, and I realized that, and I had never worked in sales previously before that, but I realized like I actually kind of enjoy just like talking to people and like kind of just almost sometimes bullshitting with people and getting to know them better, and ultimately helping them make a decision that's going to benefit their life. At the time I was selling like gym memberships and corporate fitness sales and personal training packages and stuff like that. And I got the opportunity to really help somebody positively impact their life through building a better body and getting healthy. So that was kind of the start for me. What about you?
Dude, I kind of just dove into it. I messed up a lot. I made a lot of mistakes, but eventually the reps came and I got better and better. And the biggest thing is that there was iteration, but it was like practiced iteration. I think you and I talked about this earlier today, where you can do practice, but if you don't actually have perfect practice or perfect your practice, it doesn't mean anything, right? So every time I messed up, I would review my calls. I would always record them and then listen to them over and over brutally, and have them reviewed by other people as well that did it better than me and got their feedback. And I always asked for them to rip it up, right? Because
yeah.
I don't want them to be polite and be like, oh, not hurt my feelings, things like that, because that's not helping me. So if you can't get a sales job and you just want to get some sales going and you're doing it through your agency, record your calls, listen to them yourself, try to figure out where the bottleneck happened, where like the disconnect started happening in your call. And if you can, the best thing to do is find someone to help you review your calls for you, and you have to know that they're doing it themselves, right?
Yeah,
I mean, they're doing it right now in the space. That way you know you're getting it from somebody reputable. Yeah,
dude, I mean, that's ultimately gonna be the fastest way to improve at sales, right? It's like you going out there, taking action, messing up a lot and implementing, and then getting feedback from somebody who already has made your mistakes 10,000 times over, you know, because they can just literally fast track you to how to get better just insanely quickly. Dude, how did you personally get better at asking better questions? Because like I said, dude, I think that is one of the greatest skills to have, and it's also one of the hardest skills to get good at. So most people just don't know how to do it.
Dude, a really big part of it is practicing brevity. Because a lot of people, when they ask questions, they tend to say too many things, they tend to beat around the bush, and they don't really know what they want. So before you even ask a question, what do you really want? Right? Like, is that really the deep core of what you really want? Is that what it is? And if it isn't, then go even a step further. And once you figure out what you want to know, then structure the question around that. it's a really hard concept to pick up, and it's going to be a lot of intangibles that we talk about when it comes to like getting better at asking questions. It's going to come through practice. But the biggest thing is, you know, if you ask a question and the prospect is confused or they stumble or whatever, then that's right off like a big giveaway that you're not really being clear with what you want. Because if someone that I'm talking to, like one person isn't really experienced in sales and they ask me a broad question, I'll just be like, hey, just ask a better question. But if Sebastian was asking me a question, freaking moving this camera closer and closer.
Dude, I'm trying to hold it steady here.
If Sebastian asks me a question, I know it's going to be poised and pointed, and he'll get whatever answer he's looking for because he'll ask it in such a way.
Yep.
I don't know if that was actually helpful though. What do you think for people to ask better questions?
Yeah, I'll give some thoughts.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts, bro?
Well, is actually the reason I was being a little bit more quiet is like really kind of digesting and like listening to you guys talk. And literally, like, if you just go back to the beginning of like when you guys started kind of going back and forth, like Karan asked you a really good question. He didn't say, hey, like, Sebastian, tell me what books you've read and this and that and the other thing that have helped you get in sales. He literally kept it at, hey, like, tell me more about how you got good at sales, right? So like it allowed you to like, it felt like you were, like you kind of had the power, but he also wanted to make you feel like it was just like, yeah, like let's have a conversation. So it's like, it's just those little minute like differences that when you start to get better at sales, it just sounds like it's a part of a regular conversation, and it doesn't feel like these Jordan Belfort, like whoever, Grant Cardone, like lines that you throw at people to get them to say like what you want specifically. So just like little small things that you can even just pull out of the way that we just talk to each other.
Right there is like actually freaking listening, right? A lot of you think you're listening, but the biggest lie in communication is that it's actually happening. Right? The biggest myth in communication is that it's actually happening. Most of you think you're having
what's actually happening?
Yeah, is that the communication is actually happening.
Oh, gotcha.
Because dude, a lot of people feel like they're having sales conversations, but really you're just reading out from a script, and you're not having the prospect feel like they're being understood. And if the prospect doesn't feel like they're being understood, then you're never going to actually give them what they want. And if you can't give them what they want, they're never going to buy from you.
Dude, those are all freaking fantastic points. Yeah, I think like, Aaron, what you hit on a couple things that are really important. Number one, it's really like the small, subtle things in conversation. It's like the way in which you ask questions, how you ask them, even like your vocal delivery. Like you'll hear people ask questions in sales scenarios and even just in conversation where you can tell that the way they ask them, like they're looking for a specific answer. You know, like they're fishing for something. And that's also like a common mistake. But I think another key concept is that sales, it bleeds over so heavily into just like getting better at conversation. Like we're saying, like being a better communicator in general. And I think one concept that's really powerful is that you always have to remember that people love to talk about themselves. And for me, I always look for ways to get people to open up more and talk more about themselves, because by doing that, not only will you actually connect with people more in a sales scenario or in general, but also the more somebody's telling you, the more it actually gives you to then take off into other sections of conversation. The more opportunity it gives you to ask other questions based off of what they tell you. So you actually don't have to do that much talking a lot of the times. You can just kind of feed off of what the other person's telling you by asking the right types of questions. So I know we kind of threw a lot.
Dude, I know. That was a little sales masterclass.
Little like mini masterclass in the car, bro.
So before like we transition from that, like give some like examples of, I guess, questions that people can ask that are a little bit more open-ended to like get the answers that you're looking for.
Yeah, dude, I think asking questions like
dude, something that's really, really basic.
Thanks for interrupting me, by the way.
You were taking too long.
Well, you know, see, some people like to think through what they're going to say and don't just spew what's top of mind.
Three steps ahead of you, bro.
Anyways.
I had to do U-turn.
Dude, a lot of people, like, when a prospect says they need to think about it, you'll just be like, what do you need to think about? Or like, well, what's the cost of you not doing that? Or like, you can't afford to do that, right? It's too aggressive. Something that works really well, and I use it all the time. I probably say it like 10 to 15 times per call. It's very, very simple. 3 words. What do you mean? 4 words.
Yeah, basic math's a good skill as well. I'm sorry, I had to.
This is literally just like our entire.
But dude, like
literally,
that's such a good phrase to use, and it's not something that I want you to just like vomit every time you don't understand something.
Yeah.
But if you something isn't clear, then you just need to express it. It's like, well, okay, well, like, what do you mean?
Yeah. Dude, I think that's really good.
Yeah?
No, seriously.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm not always sarcastic, you know? I think one more thing to wrap here, or before we wrap, to add on to that is another great phrase you can use is anytime someone tells you something and you want to either get more clarity on it or you're confused or maybe something's just not quite, again, clear, tell me more about that. I think that's a fantastic way to get people to open up because you're not actually asking a question, you're just asking them to tell you more about that or tell me more about like, you know, what you think about that or tell me more about how that makes you feel. Right? Just tell me more about that. There's just something psychologically where it doesn't feel like you're attacking somebody and you're like, well, what do you mean by that? Or like, what exactly are you trying to say? Those are more like kind of hostile questions. What do you mean is great, especially if you ask it in the right way. And I think tell me more about that is a way less hostile, but it still gets people to open up. Because it shows that you're also genuinely interested in like what they have to say and what they're thinking.
Words, but like that's just tangible, right? Like you have to focus on your tonality as well. That's
For
a whole other topic.
Those are the intangibles, yeah.
I think we're at our spot, but I want to leave you with one last thing.
Dude, I'm hungry.
A lot of people,
you better hurry up.
They want to be interesting. So if you want to be interesting, be interested. That's it.
Woo, baby. Way to go. We'll see you guys soon. Peace.